All right, everyone. It is 2 o'clock exactly. So we are going to honor when our first virtual art exhibit is supposed to start and start the event. My name is Cassandra Miller, and I'm the communications manager at the Iroquois Museum, and I'll be moderating the event today. And we have several artists who are excited to share information about their background and their work. So thank you all for attending. And a little bit about the Iroquois Indian Museum. It has been around since 1981 and in its current location since 1992 in House Cave, New York. And it was established as an independent nonprofit, founded on the idea that art can serve as a window into Iroquois culture. And so each year, the museum presents these special exhibitions around different topics. And this exhibition, Identity, Identify, was meant to open in 2020, but because of COVID-19, our museum is closed right now. So this will be our exhibit for 2021. And this exhibit asks the questions: who is considered Iroquois, who belongs, who does not, and who gets to decide. So the museum and consultants reached out to different artists in Canada and the US to answer those questions. And we have about 16 different Iroquois artists who are represented in this exhibition. So we'd like to thank a few people, including the project consultants, Andrea Chrisjohn and Melanie Printup Hope. Melanie, who's with us today, and both are artists in the show. I'd also like to thank Ditch Design of Hudson, who designed this beautiful design that you see right now for our exhibition, the Identity Identify. And we also have gotten supports from Humanities New York and the Institute for Museum and Library Services that has made this exhibit possible. And just a little bit about how the event is going to go today. Each artist will be speaking for about 4 or 5 minutes, and they'll give a little bit of background, and they'll also answer any of your questions. So attendees, you can pose questions to the artist by, if you hover on your screen, there is a Q&A option at the bottom of the Zoom meeting that you can click on and just type your question in there. And if we have time, I will ask the artist your question. And I see somebody has a question. So Monica, could you put your question in the Q&A so that we can practice this, and also I can see if I can address what your question is. So I'll wait for Monica to do that. And yeah, so we do have several of the artists with us here live, and those artists who aren't with us, some artists have sent us a video describing their work. And for those who don't have a video, our museum curator, Colette Lemmon, will be reading artist statements or just giving a little bit of background for each of the artists and their work. And I see that, okay, we don't have questions, so we are just going to start with Melanie.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So I wanted to first acknowledge the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which I live in Toronto. I want to acknowledge the ancestral and traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, specifically the Mohawk and the Mohegan, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which I raised my family and on which the Iroquois Museum is located. I also want to acknowledge the ancestral and traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, specifically the Seneca and the Wenro, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which I grew up in the Tuscarora Indian Reservation in western New York. And I also want to acknowledge the territories of the Tuscarora, who are the original owners and custodians of their land in eastern the eastern coastal region of North Carolina. Identify, for me, this would be 30 years of researching my ancestry, my parents, my grandparents, and all of my great-grandparents. 20 of these years focus on my father's family, the Tuscarora and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I was born in Niagara Falls and raised on the Tuscarora Indian Reservation as a Christian and educated from pre-K through 12 and did my undergraduate and graduate work in New York State in a colonial educational system. So I create art about my ancestry using beads and techniques that I learned from my Tuscarora relatives, and I tell stories of our ways of being. My background, my father, Quentin Charles Printup, was enrolled member of the Tuscarora Nation. He inherited his membership through my grandmother, Minnie Thompson, who was an enrolled member of the Tuscarora Bear Clan. Because it is a matriarchal system and my mother is of European descent, I was not enrolled, but recognized through the US federal government's Bureau of Indian Affairs because I met the 1/4 blood quantum required, myself being half Indigenous. My research has identified 7 generations of my Indigenous ancestry through tribal records, census records, birth, marriage, death certificates, newspaper articles, and books. 47 Haudenosaunee members are identified, most Tuscarora from the Bear, Deer, and Beaver clan, Onondaga Eel clan, and 1 unconfirmed Oneida Turtle clan. I do have English and French ancestry through my great-grandfather, William Johnston Chew. I have 33 grandparents of English ancestry on my family tree, which includes 23 generations from England and 5 from North America. I also have 3 French ancestry grandparents, 1 from France and 1 from North America. And the earliest known birth of that ancestry in North America dates back to 1627 in Plymouth, Massachusetts. My mom, Catherine Edith Krogan, which this piece in the show is about, documents my Italian ancestry in Niagara Falls and Buffalo, New York. The last 10 years of my research has focused on her ancestry. Her parents divorced when she was a child, so she spent many years in St. John's Orphanage in Buffalo before she joined my grandfather and his wife on the Tuscarora Indian Reservation, where she met and married my father and had me. So her mother, Catherine Margaret Rappel, was born in Buffalo, as well as her father, Philip, and her grandfather, John. And her great-grandfather, Philip, was from the Alsace-Lorraine region of France, born in 1830. The eldest, Philip, married Maria Mann, who was from the Hesse-Kassel region of Germany. John's wife, Marguerite Fischer, immigrated in 1865 from Lemmon, Palatinate region of Germany. And John married Catherine Reben, who was from Germany also. My mom's, her father, Stephen William Krogan, was born in Niagara Falls, Buffalo, New York. And Stephen's mother, Edith Judd, was born in Lockport, New York, and she comes from 11 generations of English relatives in North America. And I have thousands and thousands of relatives that I traced through 11 generations in North America and many beyond that. So this piece is actually about Stephen's father, who immigrated to Niagara Falls in the late 1800s with his son, it was Joseph Krogan, and his son Samuel Krogan. They angelicized their original names, which took me 4 years to finally trace their ancestry to the southern region of Italy in Salerno. They actually founded the first Catholic church in Niagara Falls, New York, St. Joseph's. So this piece represents, you see the cross, and it represents, that cross overlays a beat-up map of Italy, since this work is a personal journey through layers of historical records connecting back to my Italian ancestry and religious beliefs. So by tracing the cross top to bottom and left to right, you make the sign of the cross, which is what I do when I attend the Catholic Church. And so it traces the 4 generations of my family, the first generation being Joseph Krogan on the top, Samuel Krogan and his family on the bottom. On the left is my mom's father, Stephen Krogan, and then my family, my mom and my family. So you actually do the cross. And also I did have a prayer kneeler that I put in front so the viewer would be able to come and sit in front of it and be able to trace those generations. So thank you so much, Niala.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Melanie. And we have a question from one of our attendees, and I don't know how quickly you'll be able to answer this, but
Okay.
I will pose it to you. So
Okay.
the question is, what approaches can we take as Indigenous community members with our urban youth and adults who struggle with being separated from their land and their identity?
I think that I would recommend that they try to do research. There's actually a lot of paper research, although the Haudenosaunee our ways of being are traced through wampum belts and through generations of that. We had our oral language, so I would try to actually try to find research. I work I'd go to Ancestry a lot to learn a lot about my mom's family. But there are a lot of census records for the community. And I would say start there and then try to find the community and make that connection with the community. I think that's really important that you do that.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the next artist that we're going to talk about is Ric Danay, and our curator, Colette Lemmon, will be talking about this piece, Half Breed.
Okay, unfortunately, Ric couldn't be here in person, although I'm not sure, I think he may be attending. So I'm gonna do my best Ric Danay impersonation here. Ric lives in Corona, California, and he has been at the forefront of the Native art scene since the early 1980s. He is no stranger to ironic and playful work that challenges the conventions of Native art, and which occasionally can make viewers a little uncomfortable, an issue he does not have a problem with. This piece is no exception. Born in Coney Island, New York, to a Ganawage Mohawk father and a non-Native mother, in an interview from the 1990s, Ric said he is never ashamed of being a mixed blood, except sometimes for the white part. About this particular piece, Half Breed, which is in our collection, he says, this sculpture is about identity and how it is perceived on different levels. As a son of a Mohawk father and a Jewish mother, I have always had my identity questioned as to who I am. This has never been a problem for me personally. It has apparently been a problem for some people I've met in my life. I usually fend off offending questions by jokingly saying, I'm a Shemohawk, get over it. Thank you, Ric.
All right, great. Our next artist is Hayden Haynes. And then, right.
Hi, everybody. Thanks to the Iroquois Indian Museum for allowing me to take part in this show. Happy to be here with you guys today. So this, normally I do antler carving. Sometimes I do stone carving. So what you're seeing here is actually stone carving. Title is obviously Descendants Independence. So from the beginning, as a child, I grew up and I still reside. Actually, I live in the house that I grew up in on the Cattaraugus territory. Back then, the times were vastly different than what someone might see driving through our territory today. Widespread poverty, lack of funding. So one of the things that I remember as a child was all the stray dogs in our territory up on our road here. And, you know, you'd see them always foraging for food, the garbage cans. There was always a battle. When you put your garbage out to the side of the road, you know that the dogs are more than likely going to get into it because there's just so many dogs running around everywhere. So I remember a few instances, actually, I've seen these dogs, they're trying to get the scraps in some cans, bigger cans. And so they would be running around. You'd see them running around with their head stuck in the can, running into things, trying to get their heads out of there. And it's a memory that always, you know, stuck with me. So that's, you know, what started this piece that I did with the dog, with the very skinny dog that seems to be starving, digging in the can for scraps, basically. So to me, that would be like, you know, our descendants. And then up above is the fat cat. You know, fat cat meaning, you know, someone who's well off, someone who's got, you know, things that have been inherited to them. They're kind of well off people. So you got this fat cat that's kind of looking down at this dog, just kind of watching, not really doing a whole lot as the dog is struggling. So the dependent part would be what you would call, I guess, the members, the enrolled people. And I will say this, you know, and this is something I really hate saying because you know, I have some thoughts on it. I'm an enrolled Seneca, you know, and I hate saying that because when you say that, it kind of makes you, gives the impression that you're somehow different than your other Seneca or Haudenosaunee brothers and sisters, and I don't feel that way at all. So anyway, I say that because, you know, this piece is about how I think today still we are the enrolled people, the members, whatever you want to call them. We need to do more to include our, again, I hate the word, descendants, sisters and brothers who don't get all the privileges and all the things that make our lives a little bit easier. And, you know, that's what this whole piece is about, is to just kind of, you know, spur that, keep that conversation going that, you know, we have our sisters and brothers who are descendants. You know, there are people, you know, they're descendant Senecas. To me, they're just Seneca. You know what I mean? And we shouldn't really just stand back and continue to watch them. You know, not even just talking about the benefits you get as an enrolled member, but just the acknowledgement as a people. You know, even within our communities, you know, there's a difference between, you know, well, you're not enrolled, you know, from a Seneca, enrolled Seneca person, for example, to point out somebody as, oh, well, they, you know, they're not enrolled. You know, that conversation happens all the time in our communities. And it's sad because we're, you know, alienating our own people. And, you know, we really should come together more as a community, accept each other and embrace that, because it's, you know, having mixed children is something that's just continued to increase. It's going to continue to increase whether people like it or not. And we have to support each other.
All right, great, thank you. And our next artist is Danielle Soames. And this. Okay, you're on.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Hello, Sego. My name is Danielle Soames. A lot of folks know me as Danielle Bray, but they don't know me as Buaneo, Thundering Echo in the Wind, which is a name that was given to me by my mother, who was born in Ganawage, Quebec, Mohawk Reservation. I am also Ashkenazi Jewish on my father's side, who was born in the Bronx, New York. But I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, so I grew up a Southern Mohawk Jew, and I now reside in New York City. I came to New York City, and this place has shaped my entire adulthood. I've been working in theater as an actress, director, writer, producer and former artistic co-director and founder of my own theater company, Phoenix Theater Group. I'm now a member of Safe Harbors NYC as a repertory theater ensemble member. It's an all-Native theater group, and we focus on Native issues that continue to impact the Native community through theater education, community outreach partnerships, and we have some exciting events coming up. Before I mention them, I just wanted to say thank you to Hayden. That your statement about non-enrolled individuals is exactly where my heart aches, because I'm not enrolled in Ganawage, but I am enrolled through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So I have limited access to things that are part of my heritage, like land. But to get back to a couple of events that are coming up, October 28th at 7 p.m. for HowlRound, a panel on Native theater, Where Are We Now, will be played. And you can find that on Safe Harbors NYC media website. I want to dedicate this exhibit, which this installation of mine, the woven, it's Woven Wisdom Traveling, to my dear friend and former managing director, Kevin Tarrant, who we lost to COVID-19 in May. He was one of the people that impacted my life, and this series of events that the Iroquois Indian Museum is having is part of Kevin's carrying forward. I also want to dedicate it to my father, Jackie Kleiner, who's deceased and also featured in my exhibit, and my mother, who's with me. I rescued her from assisted living, and my husband, Brandon Gray. My exhibit focuses specifically on Clansmother. Clansmother heritage, as well as carrying on culture through the water. What you see in front of you starts off with a poem, which I'd like to read, and that explains a lot of my exhibit. Stone cold sun warmth, father ground, mask worn, knowledge past, heritage intact, mixed blood, prayer said, creator above, dust below, memories live, father gone, legacy survives, clan's mother to carry on. My father taught me to be strong, knowledgeable, and kind, with harsh words that soothed my heart. My mother, with passive strength, carried me along, as my friend with heritage, centering to make me strong. Thundering echo in the wind while the wolf howls up at the moon. Rosebuds with love as I send a message above. Fierce and complete, with a warrior hugging at my knee, to protect my vision of inclusive creation, dialogue, and immersive-based energy. My Clansmother mask shares the message of truth, pain, heart pounding, wisdom expanding news of the present, future, and past. For the stone left behind creates the earth that we stand on, a legacy left behind. Mask of a legacy stone. So thank you. I would prefer for you to look at each item. There's a photography, like journalistic style, where I took my Clansmother mask to visit my father's grave. And I left a stone behind, which is part of Jewish heritage, where you leave a stone behind to let the person know that you were there. And the connection to the stone and the earth is what I was hoping to accomplish, while the Clansmother mask is carried over the St. Lawrence River. And then the fertility mask shows the future. And that mask was initially created with an idea of an African fertility mask that I've seen. I thought it was important to keep the blue connected to the water so that you could see a continuation and a fluid motion of the past and the future, and how we always carry our heritage forward. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And the next artist is Ann Hoffman, who is she has contributed a video explaining her work.
So Goldie, my name is Ann Hoffman. I'm a raised beadwork artist from Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and I'm the beadwork student of Samuel Thomas and his mom, the late Lorna Hill. I was excited when I heard that the Iroquois Museum was going to do an exhibit about identity. I wanted to do something that would be classically, visually, immediately recognizable as Iroquois beadwork. What better, I thought, than the classic Caroline Parker skirt, a skirt that we all identify as Iroquois. And so I began with a length of blue English wool. Lengths of ribbon were hand-sewn to the edge of the fabric. The colors of the ribbons were meant to represent corn, beans, squash, and water. White beads were added, encircling the entire skirt. More and more rows of beads were added in complementary colors, and ribbon too. And even the ribbon got beaded until the entire border was complete and ready for the final design. Like the Caroline Parker skirt, I determined that mine would have a diagonal floral design as well, but mine would be a design encompassing corn, beans, and squash. Finally, after months of beading, there it was, a skirt, as Iroquois as I could make it, at least on the outside anyway. But I wanted this skirt to represent all of my identity, my Oneida side, of course, but my Croatian side as well, and the way those two sides came together in my mother and my father. So I made a lining for that skirt, and on that lining, I printed pictures of my family, all my family, both sides of my family, every one of whom I loved dearly. I would trade none of them for any other family. And so now there is this skirt, as Iroquois as can be on the outside, as me as it can be on the inside. And I hope you'll enjoy it. Yuanko to the Iroquois Indian Museum for taking on this complex project. Ann Hoffman, October 4, 2020. Onigitwa.
All right, wonderful. So our next artist is Natasha Smoke Santiago, and Colette will be reading something about this piece.
Unfortunately, Natasha's not here. This is quite a large piece. It is mixed media, 3 foot wide by 5 foot tall. Natasha is Mohawk Turtle Clan from the community of Akwesasne, which is up on the Canadian-New York border. Like most Indigenous individuals in North America today, Natasha negotiates at least 2 different entities when it comes to her Mohawk identity. Her submission references how she is labeled, categorized, and questioned based on 2 different standards. One imposed by Canada's Indian Act of 1876, and the other by her own Akwesasne Mohawk Tribal Registry. According to the Indian Act, only the Canadian government can define who is Indian. Once defined as Indian, one is granted status. For the past 100 years, there have been many different laws defining who is and who is not eligible for such status. This is, if you were present when Danielle was speaking, this goes back to her own story. Natives are the only group over which the Canadian government has authorized itself to decide who belongs, who does not, and what rights are available to those who identify as First Nations. And now we're going to move on to work by an Oneida artist.
All right. So the next artist is Erin.
Somebody wake up Steffi. Okay. Okay, thank you. This Erin has two pieces in the exhibit, and the other one is equally fun, and they're both very large and very tactile. This is probably 4 foot tall, very, very colorful and inviting. Erin Antonak is Oneida Nation Wolf Clan, the daughter of Andrea Chrisjohn, and the granddaughter of Richard Chrisjohn, if those are individuals that most of us are quite familiar with. The predominance of the color pink in much of her work is a reflection of how she thought of herself growing up. Half red, half white, half native, half not. In other words, pink. She provided this particular statement: I often think about the things we pass down between the generations. I grew up learning Iroquois craft techniques from my mother, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. My family is known for the authenticity of our crafts and chosen materials. We frequently made replicas of items for museums and anthropological studies. I look at my hands when I'm weaving cornhusk, wool, or wood, and I think about how they are the result of women's hands weaving in the same way over generation after generation. Weaving ties me to my lineage, and it creates space for me to consider my connectedness to the past and future. It represents knowledge about life and healing sent through time from my ancestral mothers. While working, I reflect on the lives of those matrilineal ancestors and the challenges that they faced. It is comforting and empowering to know my own life is proof of their ability to persevere through extraordinarily difficult circumstances. My work is an effort to recognize my place in the great chain of Iroquois women before and after me, and to gain strength and healing from acknowledging their presence. The circular motif in my work is both the result of meditative work and a reference to portals, openings in other worlds, other possibilities, wormholes to the past and future. It also acts as a visual invitation for contemplation and self-reflection. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to Lance Hodahkwen's work. Lance is from Onondaga. So this piece is also very large and very heavy, and it is all mosaic. It is 8 foot long and 3 foot high. Lance is a member of the Onondaga Nation near Syracuse, New York. This piece was created in response to something that happened in Lance's life back in 1966. Lance was in Air Force basic training, and a fellow recruit in boot camp discovered that Lance was Iroquois. And he asked the individual, explained that he himself was always told he was 1/64th Native. And he wanted Lance to tell him what that meant. At the time, Lance really didn't have an answer, but it really frustrated him that he couldn't clarify this. So he kept returning to this question and this problem for many years, long beyond his service time. In 2014, Lance finally figured out a way to illustrate what it was he wanted to say. And he ultimately, after trying many things, he settled on simple geometrically rendered human figures, each made up of 64 one-inch tiles, each consisting of different proportions of red and white to represent the individual's native, non-native ethnic composition. When it came to representing the figure, which is the one on the far left, that would represent the recruit who had originally asked the question, he had to hesitate. He had the one red tile that would represent the proportion of native blood in this individual, but where should it go? Should he put it in the figure's hand so that he could maintain a grip on it? And then he thought maybe in his foot to keep him solidly grounded and rooted to the earth. Maybe in his head to represent a particular way of thinking. In the end, Lance would decide to place the single red heart representing his friend's 1/64th Native heritage in the area that indicated his heart. So I want to thank Lance for sharing that story with us.
All right, wonderful. And our next artist is Mike Jones, who is here with us today.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're here now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Wiscano, everybody. Thanks for creating this show. It's a very complex subject, and it's something that doesn't get talked about too often, I think. My name is Mike Jones. I'm from the Cattaraugus Reservation. I'm half Native, Onondaga and Seneca, and my mother was Irish ancestry. And I grew up on the Cattaraugus Reservation. I was born in Lawton, Oklahoma. I learned pottery and sculpture and artwork from my father, Peter Jones. And that's always been a good healing thing to, when I think, I can only speak for myself, but as a mixed blood person, art and music are lifesavers, they're healers, you know, in that whole identity crisis thing. So this piece here is something I made when I was 16, going through pretty heavy identity crisis, I think. But it's kind of got a couple different levels going on here. One is it could be a veteran, a Native veteran, and the politics that go with that, and you know, being a Native veteran. Just I always used to think about that and how that must have been pretty complex for people in the military, and I would hear stories about it. And so he's got an American flag on one side and he's got the feather fan in the other, and he's looking up and he's trying to understand the complexity of it all. And it also can signify like European descent, being a mixed blood on one side and Native on the other. And you're trying to balance these whole things, you know, you're trying to balance everything. And is this Indian? Is this not Indian when I do this? Your behavior, speech, accents, all these little things, you know. And I was told one time, you know, that there's a lot of little things that go into being Native, and it's true, you know. But it's definitely a subject that's has to be talked about, and I really liked what the other panelists have said so far about it, and I'm just really grateful for this show. So the identity question is getting better, I think, with Natives. The more of us that are born, I guess, the more you know, the more we kind of have to face it, you know. Some of my family, my aunts have married people from other nations, Puerto Rico and, you know, African American, and I grew up with that. And but I also grew up on the res too, and so I saw all these different facets of cultural of cultures, mixing and not mixing, as the case may be, and it just always made me think about it, you know. It made me appreciate all cultures, I guess, you know. And even when I used to live in Texas, and I'd be in Texas for 10 years, you know, a lot of people would think I was Hispanic heritage, you know, and I spoke some Spanish. So even then, I learned about the cultural differences between, you know, Mexican Americans and Europeans and whatnot. So I learned that it wasn't just us. I learned that it wasn't just on the res that some of these issues were coming into play. So that kind of opened my mind a little bit, that it's actually a human thing. It's actually a you know, something that we all kind of deal with on different levels. And I think this show is healing. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. All right. Our next artist is Mike's dad, Peter Jones, who Colette is going to talk about this work. And Colette, I'll unmute you.
Okay, as Mike said, Pete is is the father of the artist we just heard from. Pete is Onondaga Beaver Clan, and he currently maintains a studio and home at Allegheny Reservation, which is in Western New York. It is really fitting that this older piece from our collection be included in this show, because it demonstrates the stubborn persistence of these same issues year after year. More than 30 years ago, Pete made this sculpture addressing the idea of using blood quantum as a standard for claiming Native identity. This issue is no less resolved, no less controversial today. As Pete explained, Natives are the only group of people who have to prove their ethnicity through blood quantum, adding that only the heritage of dogs and horses are treated to similar scrutiny. And thanks, Pete, that was very well said, even if it was by me.
Great. I just wanted to share a comment that was in the Q&A by an attendee, just thanking all of the artists for your work and your voice. And thank you, the museum, for this presentation. And Danielle Soames, great. Thank you for work in all areas of Native art. All right. And so that is lovely. We are going to now go on to Robert. And Robert will talk about his work.
Chwant, Askanaha. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my internet here on the res is not what you would hope for. So I might sound garbled at times, and I apologize for that. I've been on Zoom calls many times where it's been an issue. So my apologies up front if that happens. My English name is Robert Del Monte. Live here on the Tuscarora Nation. I'm Tuscarora Beaver Clan. I grew up in Buffalo. My grandparents, on my mother's side, were Stan and Alma Hill, and they had something to do with the Iroquois Museum getting started, and so that's why I'm here, really. So in 2013, I quit my corporate job as a software architect, and it was about 10 years after Stan Hill, my grandfather, passed away. He had such an impact on our entire family and our in my life in particular here, and it was always my dream to try to sort of follow in his footsteps. And so he passed away in 2003, and it took me 10 years to unwind from that corporate job, and finally made the decision to come out to live on the Tuscarora Nation, where my mother's side of the family is from. And so I did that, and it was a little bit of a culture shock for me and for the people out here to have a Tuscarora who grew up in the city come out here and live among everybody. And so, through that journey, which I'm still on, it's, you're faced with lots of different opinions and attitudes, especially because my family has not been enrolled. And I understand what some of the comments that have been said here, how that word enrollment is kind of has a negative connotation. And my family, my grandparents, Stan and Elma, moved off the territory because of the politics out here at Tuscarora, largely. It was my great grandma, Elma's mother, who was actually removed from the rolls because of the Indian Act in Canada. She married somebody from Six Nations. She married Jim Wilson from Six Nations. And so they were removed. The council of Tuscarora removed her from the rolls down here in Tuscarora. So the Canadian my great grandmother was, she was never Canadian, never a Canadian citizen or anything. And so because she was removed, my family ended up moving off the territory. And so I grew up in Buffalo. So coming back here, having lots of conversations. I like to talk. I like to understand. I'm a history buff, but I also have opinions about things too. And so, I've gotten into quite a few conversations with people over the years, like identity, what does it mean to be Native, et cetera, et cetera. And so some of the things that I hear often, unfortunately, are depicted on this piece. So this piece at the very top, it says "Chwant Askenahat," which is a sort of a Tuscarora greeting that basically translates to "Hello, are you still with peace?" And so it's a common greeting among Haudenosaunee and probably other nations as well to inquire about one's peace or hope that one is still at peace or has peace in their life. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of that sentiment among these English phrases that many of us, I've heard them, I've been myself. And so what I have in the piece is puts up, and then years ago we were able to put up the Skaruda Gayadakra, which is translates to where the Tuscarora people dwell or live, and so that's sort of in a cold field, because it feels cold when these kinds of sentiments and words are spoken. And so you can see some of the things that get said, that you're a sellout, I've been Indian longer than you, you're doing it wrong, city Indian, born again Indian, even the English swear word was a little bit of a controversy on this piece, just to have it put in a public space that has people, that are not people that are maybe offended by that language. At first, I'll just give a little story about it. At first there was, a question about, should this piece be put up in a public space that has that language? And this is my interpretation of what I heard. So the people that are on the call or who were involved could also add theirs if they want. But just the idea that, I'm exhibiting English language here that's offensive from an English speaking perspective. That English language has been used against our own. And that's sort of a dig people will use often, but it certainly loses impact when you don't have the swear word in front of it. So I included that there, and I pushed to keep it in that piece, even though there was one suggestion was to maybe take it out or cover it up, or sort of put an asterisk in there so you can't really tell it says that. But I felt it was important to leave it in there because, here we are talking about identity and who we are as Native people. Well, part of who we are, we've been colonized to speak English, and most of us, I would say, speak English, not our indigenous language. And then to make matters worse, we're trying to be censored for using the English language in an inappropriate manner. So it's kind of an interesting piece of this puzzle. But there's a lot of negativity on that piece that is directly opposite to the sentiment that is expressed when people greet each other. And so it was really just done to remind people of our intentions, which I think for the most part, people have the intention of being good and wanting to be kind to each other. But I think through the process of colonization that we've, many of us at times grow angry or upset or don't know how to express the ill effects of colonization without turning to this negativity. So that was sort of the genesis, the basis of that piece. So I hope you enjoy it, I guess. And I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this exhibit. It's a big topic. There's a lot that I'd like to talk about among identity. Obviously, we don't have a lot of time here to do that, but I would appreciate any opportunities going forward to continue this conversation. It's a really important one. All right, Nyawa.
Great. And Robert, actually, a couple of people posed questions while you're speaking, and some of our artists responded to them. One of the first questions was, are there any of the communities trying to incorporate those who are not enrolled? And I didn't know if Robert, maybe you wanted to address that, or if another artist wanted to address that question.
I could take a stab at it from the Tuscarora perspective.
Great.
So my family should be enrolled because we're a matrilineal society as opposed to a matriarchal society. Our women are not in charge, but we follow our mother's side. So if your mother is a Tuscarora, who has a clan, then her offspring are you get your nation and your clan from your mother. And so there is an effort here on our nation to right the wrongs of the past that way. And but the Tuscarora are adamant about following the matrilineal aspects of our culture. And so certainly people that are matrilineally Tuscarora ought to be treated equally and treated the way all Tuscarora, other enrolled Tuscaroras are treated. And being enrolled is just a modern term, really, for like you can own land out here. You can get some of the services. We don't have money or anything out here, so there's no real financial benefit. But to be able to have land out here and to be live among the people without question, I think is a big thing. So yeah, they're working on that. It's a hard process. It's a long process for many of the reasons that I spoke of with colonization. There's some people that are against it because they feel threatened, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really complex topic. So I can only speak for my experiences here at Tuscarora. But I also just want to add one thing. I feel that many of us are, my generation, my mother's generation, my grandparents' generation for sure. I think we had lost so much through this whole process of colonization that we're threatened constantly with losing more, and so we're hard pressed to want to allow others into our world. So I think as we gain more strength and as we get back to perhaps the strength we once had, where we're confident and we know who we are, our languages are strong, and our way of life is intact. I think when we get back to that place, then we can exhibit those qualities that are also part of our culture, which is to treat each other like we're all the same height, whether you're native, non-native, half native, half non-native, whatever the case is. One of the core principles of the Great Law is to treat each other with respect, all living things. And that goes for people too. So I think when we get stronger, I think it will be less of an issue that somebody might not have the blood quantum that they're supposed to have, or if it's on the right side. But I just want to, if I could, just take another moment on that topic. One other thing that I struggle with when I'm thinking about this and talking about this with people is to be an indigenous person of North America. Your ancestors have to, it seems like they have to come from this land to be considered indigenous to this land. And so one aspect that I struggle with is, like if you have somebody who doesn't have any indigenous blood, but knows how to be a native, an Indian, as they say, knows the language, knows the culture, knows the ceremonies, is that person native? What is their identity really? So those kinds of questions are big questions to talk about and to have conversations about. So I think this exhibit, I hope, will spark those conversations among people to explore, what those answers are for each of us, because they're going to be different across the board for everybody. None of us has the answer for everyone. So I think for that reason, this is a good, important exhibit, and hopefully we'll continue to have those conversations. I'll shut up.
Oh no, that was great. Thank you. That was wonderful. And yeah, we hope that we'll be able to have more of these discussions talking about this exhibit, because it'll be up in person in April through November, but we're aware it's here. So hopefully there'll be more of those discussions. And our next artist is Andrea Chrisjohn, and she has sent a video.
Hi, my name is Andrea Chrisjohn. I am a Children of the Sun. My dad was Richard Chrisjohn, Haudenosaunee, Oneida Wolf Clan. I did not grow up on the territory or the reservation, but I did feel very connected to my culture until my grandfather passed in '91. This painting shows a clan mother, and her eyes and her mouth are sewn shut. She has in one hand a stack of money, in the other hand she's holding an enrolled member or a star belly, and he has 5 arrows in one hand and money in the other, money by his feet, money in his pockets. Just as one arrow by itself is weak and can be easily broken, 5 arrows together are strong and solid, and represents how the tribe and the nation stand with him, which as an unenrolled member or a Children of the Sun, we do not get. You see the unenrolled members at the bottom of the painting. One is trying to climb in the hand with the star belly, and you see his one arrow in his hand, and he's just trying to get up there. He's not getting helped, and I doubt he'll make it. The other one under her other hand is holding his blood papers. I have blood papers. They are sealed with a nice little seal, and my blood is quantified by the nation that doesn't recognize me. Anyhow, so that person is just standing there with their one arrow by their lonesome. It really does feel like as soon as the money came into the family that we were just discarded and not considered. It saddens me. I feel that at this point, like the medicine bag around the clan mother's neck, that at this point Mother Earth is for sale too. I just feel the integrity has been lost, or bought would be a better way to put it. And my grandfather would be very saddened. This painting does represent how I feel, and I'm very grateful to have been asked to be a part of this. I think that there's going to be a lot more coming. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
All right, wonderful. And then our next artist is Margaret Jacobs, who is here with us today. And just make sure that Margaret, yep, you're unmuted. Perfect.
Okay. So my name is Margaret Jacobs. I am Akwesasne Mohawk Turtle Clan. And I just want to say I've been keeping a notebook of after everybody's been speaking, and everybody has said some really powerful things that have really resonated with me, and just like questions that come up in my work frequently. So I think it's really fantastic to be a part of a group of artists who are all kind of thinking about these big questions, like Robert said. So I create steel sculpture and powder coated jewelry. For me, it made sense to make a jewelry piece for this exhibition. The idea of identity and just the visual identifier of identity, wearing that made sense to create a jewelry piece. So the piece is titled Bloodline Badge, and it's a collar pin and earring set. And I created this piece because I was speaking with my dad, and he was going through historical records, and he found that my great-grandmother's race is recorded as red on her death certificate. And that just really hit me in a really interesting way. And it was something that kind of just stayed in my brain for a really long time. And then this exhibition came up, and it gave me, it kind of gave me permission to explore that avenue a little bit. So for this piece, what I'm exploring, the visual identifier of an entire race initiated my idea for this piece. In it, I'm exploring the idea behind blood quantum, how unseen components and experiences make us a whole person, and how nativeness is defined by a complexity of blood, kinship, and descent. Yeah, that's what I have.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. And our next artist is Sheila Escobar, who Colette will be talking about this piece.
Okay, this is a pair of beaded frames. These are velvet and with glass beads. And Sheila chose to base her statement on a style of expression that was popular with the Mohawks and Tuscarora since the 1860s. And so Sheila is Mohawk Turtle Clan through her mother's lines and Onondaga through her father. She grew up on the Onondaga Nation near Syracuse, and she currently resides in Baldwinsville, New York. And she did provide a statement about this piece specifically. She said, I have one son and two daughters. My piece includes my grandchildren. The red frame on the left represents my grandsons. My son married a non-native. Being from a traditional home, my grandsons, although they look native, are not allowed to follow the traditional ways. We are a matrilineal society. We follow our mother. They do not receive a clan, therefore they cannot receive a native name in the longhouse. My granddaughter is my daughter's child, although she does not look very native. Her father is non-native, but being from a matrilineal society, she can follow our native traditions. The frames are mirror images of each other. The flowers on each signify who their mothers are. The white flower on red velvet represents the non-native mom. The red flower on white represents my daughter. The foundational shapes are the same because they represent the idea that we are all family. The designs are similar, but not the same because each are individuals. So a very different perspective coming from Sheila, and definitely an important part of the conversation. We have one final piece, and this is from Rosy Simas. She produced it.
I can't not identify who's who. Not identify who's who.
So I don't have to explain the story. I say I'm Native, American Indian, Indian. I prefer indigenous now. Indigenous to Native California, or Native to California. I like to make it specific that I'm indigenous to California though. That I'm not a newcomer to California, but my people are from here thousands and thousands of years. Our creation stories tell us we came out of the waterways of Mount Shasta.
I can't not identify who's who.
I identify as mixed race, white, black, and a descendant of the Blackfeet Nation.
Ojibwe and white.
Who's who?
I'm from the Leech Lake Reservation, where I grew up, although I'm an enrolled member of the White Earth Nation.
As Seneca Indian and only that. Identify.
All right. So those were representations of all of the artists in the show, and we have some more time, and I know that Hayden wanted to speak a little bit more about some of the topics that were brought up today, so I'm going to throw it over to Hayden.
Thanks. Yeah, no, this is a really good conversation, very important one. You know, I think there's so much focus and emphasis has always been put on, you know, let's talk about the Iroquois culture. Let's talk about the culture. Let's, you know, everything's about the culture, you know, let's study the culture. You know, it's, to me, as a community member, because that's kind of the direction, you know, that I've been at for a long time, is about community. You know, community is so important. Community is going to be how we heal. You know, this conversation about descendants and enrolled people and all that type of stuff is one of like two of, in my opinion, the biggest conversations we should be having. I think the other one, more importantly, would be probably like the generational trauma that affects us, because that is what is, until that gets straightened out, And until more and more people can begin to heal within themselves and within them families, then these other things can surely, take off. And I think that's, two things, just using this opportunity to talk about, two things that, we should have more conversations about. And I know there's already a conversation out there about the generational trauma, but, that is very important for us as communities. The people who, grew up on territory, there's a different era. I've lived on territory, I've lived off territory, I've lived in different areas, different reserves actually. And it's really different. The culture has been keyed upon so often. I'm not saying it's not important at all. What I'm saying is we're in a time frame, in my opinion, where we should be focusing on topics like this exhibit's about, and we should be, talking about our communities, talking about healing, and talking about togetherness, because everything else other than that is just going to be theories and pipe dreams. But you can feel the resurgence, you can feel our communities coming together. This is a perfect example of it. The people that participated in this and the people that had the idea to hold this exhibit too. But, I just really think it's important that, there's a focus on Indigenous people, from ourselves, on community, and people that might want to organize shows or whatever to focus on, community, what's happening with our communities now, because there's a lot of challenges being faced. And it's not just because of like 2020, and the mess that 2020 has kind of been, I think, again, getting back to our community, getting back to our identity, if you will, I guess. And, because when I see a lot of our people supporting all these great causes, and I think they're great causes, Black Lives Matter is a great cause. All these causes, all these things that we've been witnessing this year and for years and years, they're all great. I'm glad that our people are definitely doing that stuff. But this exhibit and some of the other things I talked about, I think our people as a community, we should be focusing on those, healing our communities, being more accepting of our sisters and brothers who are descendants, being good to one another. Those are the starting blocks of change. The other things will end up taking care of itself.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And do any of the artists, would any of the artists like to say any closing remarks before we wrap up? You've all said wonderful things already, but we have some time left. All right. Well, again, just thank you, artists, for joining us, and thank you for being a part of this show. And thank you, everybody who joined us remotely for this virtual art opening. We recorded this whole presentation, and we'll be posting this on our website and YouTube channels, and also social media channels. And I see that, oh, we've got one more question. So, how can museums and cultural institutions collecting Indigenous art do so in a manner that supports more awareness of the issues raised in this exhibit? It's a great question. Does anyone want to take it? Yeah, Hayden, go for it. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I mean, all I would say is speaking with, current communities. I saw something interesting last week, or actually it was this week. And I won't get into the details of it. It was something not very good coming from an institution. And, they have since apologized and everything is great. But I think and they had a great idea afterwards after speaking with them. And I know some already do it, forming and having, advisory committees and steering committees and stuff like that. And maybe, reaching out to people that haven't already been reached out to. You know, a lot of times there's a redundancy that I see with certain museums across the country where it's, you know, regurgitated material with the input of the same people that have been, you know, helping with these things for years and years, and which is great. Those people have helped guide some of these institutions to certain points, but we're in a different era. We're in a different time. People think differently. And if you're trying to target, you know, new people, younger people, whatever the case may be, then I think it's important that you might want to reach out to people in the communities or people that are active with their voices and whatever platforms they have to get new ideas, new input, because there's a lot of people out there with great ideas and great input. That would be my suggestion.
That's great. Thank you. All right. All right. If that is it.
Oh, sorry. Can I add to that?
Yes, you can. Get
Okay.
in.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think like looking to different generations of artists. I just remember this one time I asked the collector, I said, oh, okay, you know, I know all of these artists that you're looking to go in and collect, these established artists. Who's new and up and coming and might not be on the radar and is like 1 year in, 2 year in, whose career is going to kind of push forward? Like, who are those people that we need to be looking at? And they didn't have an answer for me, and I was blown away by that. And I think it's getting a range of artists in their careers, and just, yeah, making sure that there's a range of generation of artists that we're looking at, because there's going to be different approaches, there's going to be different ideas, different thoughts that are happening that might not be considered if you're not really going in and actively looking at who's starting to kind of change the direction of the art world.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else? All right. All right, everyone. Thank you again so much for coming. And this video again will be up on our YouTube page and our website soon. So if you wanted to share this with anybody, you can direct them.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Great. I mean, you're here, so let's
okay.
talk.
Yeah, I would say be open to change and not have the same standard art, which is identified in stereotypical ways. I think, unfortunately, we get caught up in a stereotype of what is Native art. I think that this group really expands what that is. There's a lot of variation in media, a lot of variation in styles, and also the way that we interpret our own art. I think that that's important, and it's important to hear other voices that you may not be familiar with or comfortable hearing on a regular basis, just to challenge what is the norm of Native art.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank
you. Actually, I'd love to just see if any of the other artists have any other closing thoughts who haven't spoken yet. Margaret, Melanie, Mike, or Robert. So how about we can start with Margaret? Do you have any closing thoughts? You just spoke.
I just spoke. those were my closing thoughts.
Yeah, you're like, I gave them already. Sweet.
I don't have anything else to add.
Sorry, thanks. And what about Mike?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I think just keeping, this dialogue going, keep doing shows like this. There's people in the woodworks like this, like us, I guess you could say, or like me, I should say. There's a lot of fear involved in this. There's a lot of things connected to being non-enrolled, depending on where you live and who you work for, and there's a lot of things involved, and it's oppressive, and it's not a good thing, really. So the more we talk about it and get more people online, the more we can find ways to heal, to find ways to include people. And I think this is just a good start, and we should just have more of this, and and just keep a network of people. And there's more people out there with the same kind of line of thought, and they might not want to come out, So just keep making shows like this is my suggestion.
Great, thank you. And Melanie, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I just want to thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I just want to thank everybody for participating in the show. It's really great to see the work. I just want to say that, part of the reason I do the work I do is because I never felt a part of the community growing up, because I felt discriminated on the reserve because my mother wasn't, and I felt discriminated off the reserve because I was Indigenous. So I spent a lot of time just not even identifying with who I was, and chose to go into mainstream without any identity. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I decided, I have to find out, I have to heal through this. So I feel like the work that I do is that healing process of really taking back my identity and being able to, I feel like, my community we don't have a voice, we never learned about our history going through school. And so through my work, I felt like if I learned about something within my culture, it would become an art piece, so that I'd be able to share it, and to also share it with my children who didn't grow up on a reserve, but they still carry that lineage with them. So it was kind of to educate them also. So I think, it's been healing for me through my art and understanding my own identity. Okay, thank you, Nyawa.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have Robert, and we also, Pete Jones joined us. So Robert, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of piggyback on what Mike and Hayden especially were saying. These are important conversations to have. I'd agree, especially with Hayden's comment about historical trauma, sort of informing much of what we do with ourselves nowadays. If we can figure out how to get over that, I think the landscape will look a lot differently. That's important work to do, that we all have to do on a personal level and at a community level, which is a huge challenge, of course. But and Mike, I just wanted to say thanks for the Woodworks shout out. I heard you say it, Tuscarora Woodworks. Not just kidding. Yeah, so it's been a great conversation. I hope we can find a forum like this again, and continue to have these important discussions. I think this new technology with Zoom and the pandemic and everything, I think it lends itself toward having these conversations, from the comfort of our own spaces, but we can connect with each other, digitally, so to speak. Maybe the museum would be interested in hosting a further, or an ancillary discussion where we can maybe have more time to spend diving deeper into these discussions going forward, and maybe record it and make it part of the exhibit. I don't know, just an idea. But yeah, I appreciate everybody's efforts here, and Nyawa for letting me participate.
Wonderful, thank you. And Peter Jones joined us. So Peter, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I've been listening to the conversation, but I'm not too adept at the computer, so it took me this long to get on. Anyway, yeah, I'm at what? I'm sitting here listening to all these conversations about identity and blood quantum. And the piece you talked about that I did 30 years ago is still relevant today, and it still hasn't been resolved. And it is something that was not in our culture because we were matrilineal. It was something that the government designed to identify us and differentiate who we are and who was available for whatever funding that the government gave us. It's sort of like a census. And they used it a lot to eliminate a lot of people that they say were not Indian. And it had nothing to do with whether you were Indian or not, because you could be, for instance, have a Canadian father who is recognized in a patrilineal society and a Mohawk mother who is recognized in a matrilineal, and have a child with the two Mohawks, the Canadian Mohawk and the American Mohawk, and the child still wouldn't be recognized by either nation, even though both parents are Native. The thing about it's, I have two children, Michael, who is half, and Lily, who is considered full. There is really no difference between them. They are both Indian. They're both raised on the res. One is enrolled Seneca, and the other is enrolled in the tribe through the Longhouse. We are supposed to be able to enroll people through the Longhouse. They wouldn't be enrolled as a Seneca Nation member, but they would be recognized as such, as Seneca. And the way it goes now, if you're not enrolled, you have no benefits at all, no voice, and it all depends on which side of the, which side your mother is. So the thing I've heard was that they do it that way because everyone knows who the mother is, but nobody knows who the father can be, you know, which is basically true. However, the tribes today use blood quantum as also as a differentiating tool to enroll or not enroll people. And over the years, we have become so intermarried that if we actually went blood quantum, we would lose over half of the people that are enrolled. So it doesn't make much sense either way. The piece I did was 30 years ago, and I was confronted with the problem of the blood quantum, not for myself, but for my children and people I knew that were up against this. And the piece goes 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 full. And that is how we are determined how much Indian we are, which is strange, like a gas tank, I guess. Anyway, I'm considered 4/4 myself, but I have a couple of sisters who are 3/4 or different equations, and yet we're brother and sisters, or we had the same mother, same father. But it is an error in the tribal recognition that determination was made. It's an unfair system. I noticed you had a question earlier about, do I know any tribes that are accepting unenrolled people? And I'm sure there are. I know when the Pequot Nation started up, they had an open call for members, and they were enrolling. And even in our Seneca history, we've had politicians, I'll call them, clerks, and people that were working for the Seneca Nation government that would enroll friends, people that they wanted to, if they wanted to be enrolled, you could switch roles. And there are still some tribes here, Oneidas and in the Iroquois Confederacy, that you can join. If you're like I'm considered Oneida, Onondaga, and Seneca. And there are some tribes that I could join if I wanted to. And a lot of people do that. We call jumping roles, where you can't belong to two tribes. You have to pick one. But if the benefits are better in another tribe, some people will do that. And, it's an open question as to whether it's good or bad, I think. But being an Indian, it all comes down to, what do you call being an Indian? And are you Indian or are you not? You know, and I've seen what it can do to people who are not enrolled, and it's not right. I don't think there's some way to resolve this if we go back to actually wanting to. It has become a monetary thing in some tribes, where if you have more enrolled people, you're going to pay them more because of casino money and stuff like that. It's sort of like the U.S. Census, where that's how they determine what areas get what money. If you got so many so-and-sos living here and so-and-so living there. And we're so ingrained in the dominant culture now, it's very hard to live that way, to live the way we're supposed to. That's about it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. We're glad that you were able to join and also say something. So, all right.
The old lady on the end.
Great. All right, everyone. Again, thank you so much for showing up today, and hopefully we can see you in person at the museum in the spring. And have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Newa.